Sometimes we just need fast and easy, so I'm going to share with you some amazing, simple weeknight meals that your family will love. These are healthy, delicious recipes that you can get on the table with only 30 minutes of hands-on work.
I have a new favorite smoothie, so I'm gonna make it for you.
In my kitchen, I like to use only real, wholesome, simple ingredients and a little creativity. I'm also restocking some homemade basics for the week, like muffins, peanut butter, bread, protein bars, and more. Part of what keeps my kitchen running smoothly is spending a couple of hours on a Sunday afternoon prepping for the week. So join me in my kitchen this week and let's get to work. Welcome back to my kitchen. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon. My husband is watching football and I love just hearing it in the background and getting stuff done in the kitchen. This is definitely one of my favorite times of the year, and I'm doing some prep in the kitchen tonight before I make dinner, starting with some homemade bread. I also put some chicken in the slow cooker just so I can have some shredded chicken, which I'm going to use later in the week. So for this bread, I did 570 grams of water, a half cup of olive oil, a half cup of honey, a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. This is a new method that I've been trying out and it's really been working well for me, as well as 18 grams of salt. And now I'm going to add 900 grams of freshly milled flour. I'm doing half hard white wheat and half hard red wheat. And I'm starting by adding only half of the flour and then mixing it. And then I'm going to turn off the mixer and let it sit and absorb that liquid before I add the yeast. Now I'm making some carrot applesauce muffins, which we're going to use throughout the week for snacks for my kiddos. I'm shredding 2 whole carrots, which is about a cup of shredded carrots. I'm melting a half cup of butter into a mixing bowl. I'm adding 2.5 cups of freshly milled flour. This is a blend of different flours from over the past couple of days. And the recipe calls for 1.5 cups of whole wheat flour, but I'm going to stretch it out and just add more flour because I think this recipe can handle it. I added a teaspoon of baking soda, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a half teaspoon of ginger, and about a half teaspoon of salt. Mix that up just to combine it, and then you're going to make a well in the middle of the bowl and add in your liquid ingredients, starting with 1 whole egg, a half cup of honey, a half cup of melted butter, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, or I like to use vanilla bean paste for a little more flavor. And then just start to combine this. This will be somewhat thick because we have not added the applesauce yet. So I'm switching to a spatula. And now I'm gonna crack open a jar of my homemade applesauce that I canned in my last cooking video. And so we'll find out if it's sealed properly and how that turned out.
Yay, it worked.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited about this. So I'm adding a cup of homemade applesauce and a cup of shredded carrots. I really think that using the homemade applesauce made these muffins go over the top because my kids kept raving about them. I make these a lot, but obviously the better quality ingredients you use, the better your food will turn out. I'm baking these at 350 for about 20 to 22 minutes. Now back to my bread, I'm adding a tablespoon of yeast and getting that mixer going again. I'm also adding a teaspoon of sunflower lecithin just to soften the dough even more, and now I'm adding the rest of that flour. So it was 900 grams of flour in all. I'm gonna let that knead for 10 to 15 minutes to develop gluten. Now back to my slow cooker. I put some frozen chicken in here about an hour ago. I'm just breaking it up now. I didn't add any liquid. I just was in a hurry. I threw it in there. I'm adding a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I think there's enough liquid in the chicken to cook this, and I'm just gonna shred that later. So now I'm gonna make some protein bars. I'm adding 2 cups of walnuts to a food processor and pulsing that until they turn into crumbles. And now I'm gonna add 2 cups of pitted medjol dates. I had to take my muffins out of the oven real quick, and then I'll go right back to my protein bars. I love seeing my boys follow each other around the house. I don't know what they're up to, but they're up to something for sure. Back to the food processor, I'm adding a 1/4 cup of cocoa powder, a 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla bean paste, 2 chunks of dark chocolate, and then the rest of those dates. So that's 2 cups of dates total. I'm gonna pulse these until they turn into small crumbles, and then I'm gonna add a cup of egg white protein powder. This has no flavor, but adds lots of protein. Now I'm gonna pulse this until it turns into a thick dough. Sometimes you have to add a little bit of water. I'm adding a tablespoon because of that egg white powder to help it all come together.
Amazing.
This is so delicious. It's like a chocolate protein bar. It's chewy and decadent, and I like to keep it in the freezer so that it stays hard. You could also use less dates if you want it to be a little bit more on the firmer side. I'm lining a container with parchment paper, and I'm gonna press the dough into this to create a clean bar shape. It helps to fold the parchment paper over the dough to really shape it how you want. And then this is gonna go in the freezer, and later I'll cut it into little bars that I can stick in my kids' lunch boxes. Okay, we've gotten a few things out of the way. Now we're gonna make some homemade peanut butter. Why, you may ask? Because we do not like the flavor of Costco's natural, creamy, organic peanut butter. It sounds good, but it doesn't taste good. And so it's so much more delicious if you make it on your own. I have roasted salted peanuts here, but I'm gonna roast them a little bit more at 350 for 10 minutes. I have 3 cups of roasted peanuts going in the food processor along with 2 teaspoons of honey. I'm gonna pulse that until it turns creamy. This can take a while, and you may need to pause throughout the process and push the sides down with a spatula. I also didn't let my nuts cool all the way. It's probably a good idea to let them cool down so they're not smoking hot when they're being pulsed in this food processor. But you know, I'm generally impatient and like to get things done pretty quickly. I'm adding a teaspoon of coconut oil because I think that that helps with this process and adds a good flavor, and then another teaspoon of honey. So in the end, I had 3 teaspoons of honey and a teaspoon of coconut oil and 3 cups of roasted salted peanuts. And that's my recipe for homemade peanut butter. This is gonna go into a jar, and we will use it throughout the week. My dough has finished rising, and now I'm shaping them into sandwich loaves, and I will let those rise for another hour. This dough was a little sticky, so I had to use some flour on the counter and a little bit on my hands, but this is generally how I like to shape my sandwich loaves. You want to create some tension and some structure as you're rolling it up without tearing the dough. Now that my dough is situated, I'm going to tidy up and get started on dinner. Now that I'm finished with my Sunday meal prep, I'm gonna move on to making dinner, and I wanted to show you some simple weeknight dinner ideas. So first off, I'm making chicken piccata, and we're gonna fry this chicken very lightly. I know that frying chicken sounds like a complicated process, but once you see how it's done, it's really very simple, and I think it falls under the category of a simple weeknight meal. So I did prep some chicken stock earlier. I didn't film that, but I knew I was gonna need chicken broth throughout the week, and so that is finishing up in the Instant Pot. Season your chicken generously on both sides with salt and pepper. You also wanna make sure you pat your chicken dry of any excess liquid. I added 3 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil to a skillet, and I turned it on to medium-high. The oil helps the butter to not burn, so it works well to fry the chicken in that. I'm lightly coating the chicken in some flour and shaking off the excess, and then placing it in the hot skillet. Let it cook undisturbed for 4 minutes per side. You want it to be golden brown and crispy. It looks like I may have had the heat a little bit too high, as some of the butter looked like it burned, or maybe that's some of the flour that came off the chicken. Either way, I was able to scrape some of that out, and the sauce still turned out amazing. So you're gonna do this in 2 batches, and then you're gonna make a pan sauce. First, I sauteed a diced shallot in that pan with all the leftover oil and butter. And then I added in 4 cloves of minced garlic. Only let that garlic cook for about 30 seconds, and then add in 1.5 cups of chicken broth and let that simmer down and reduce to about half the amount. Reduce the heat to low, add in 4 tablespoons of butter and about 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of lemon zest, and 2 tablespoons of capers. And then you want to whisk this all together until it emulsifies into a pan sauce. Once it thickens up, just season it a little more to taste. I added a bit more salt, and I also added a teaspoon of sugar, and then I thought it was perfect. Now I think we need something lighter to go on the side, so I'm making a salad in a quick homemade dressing. I'm using about 2 tablespoons of homemade mayo and 2 tablespoons of sour cream, about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, a squeeze of fresh lemon juice, and then a clove of garlic minced, and then just stir that up. It is simple but makes a beautiful dressing. I'm just gonna mix that up with some romaine lettuce and cucumber for a very simple side. This chicken was tender and so flavorful. The lemon really popped in this sauce. Everyone was surprised when they took a bite, which is what I like. And it was easy to cut, easy to serve. The kids really enjoyed this. So definitely gonna make this again and add it to the rotation. Maybe next time I won't burn the sauce at all and it will have a prettier, lighter color, but the flavor was on point. My bread has finished rising. I'm gonna put it in the oven now at 350 for about 35 to 40 minutes. Now I'm just shredding up this chicken, and I will put that in the refrigerator and use it for a simple weeknight meal later in the week. My bread is finished now. I'm gonna pull that out, let it cool, and that wraps up my Sunday evening. After a full day in the kitchen, all I wanna do is crash into bed, and so the mattress we use is very important to me.
Thank you so much to Birch Living for sponsoring this video. We are loving our new Birch mattress. Our previous mattress was 14.5 years old, and after having 4 children and breastfeeding 4 babies and all the things that go along with family life, our mattress had seen better days. And honestly, it didn't feel very clean at that point, so it was just time for an upgrade.
We chose their best-selling Birch Luxe Natural Mattress, which has an organic cotton Euro top, which is breathable and moisture wicking.
So it's extra cozy and comfortable. I love how soft it is and how cushy it is, but I would say it's a great middle ground. It's not overly cushy, it's also not overly firm. It's right in the middle. It works great for a lot of different sleeping styles and preferences. My husband said it felt like sleeping on a cloud, so I'm just really happy that we are both in agreement. One of the big reasons why I wanted to go with a Birch mattress is that they use premium natural materials. things like natural organic cotton, organic wool, natural latex, and fiberglass free. They also don't use any polyurethane foam, which, fun fact, gives off some noxious off gases while you sleep. They also offer a mattress for kids that is safe and fiberglass free. It's two-sided, so it offers different levels of comfort for growing children.
I love how cozy this space is with our new mattress. There's nothing better than snuggling up in bed with your kids and reading a book. And of course, I feel better knowing that we're resting on a mattress with materials sourced straight from nature. And as an added bonus, each mattress comes with a plush pillow set to fit your mattress.
So if you're in the market for a new mattress, definitely check out Birch Living. They're offering a huge discount right now. So if you go to the link in the description, birchliving.com/christinesnotebook, and enter the code BirchPartner27, you can get 27% off your own Birch Living mattress, which is a huge savings. So I hope you can take advantage. We love our mattress, and I think you will too. And now I'm going to kick back and relax, and then we'll get back to the cooking.
For dinner, I'm gonna make a stir fry, and so first I'm cooking some rice in the Instant Pot. I only had brown rice left, so I'm using that. I'm doing 2 cups of brown rice and 2.5 cups of chicken broth. I have this pot of broth that I made on Sunday, and I'll be using it throughout the week. So I have a stir fry recipe that I found from Recipe Tin Eats, and I'm going to be modifying it tonight, but I've linked the original recipe in the description. So I have 2 pounds of flank steak here. I'm cutting it across the grain and cutting it very thinly. Into a bowl, I'm adding 3 tablespoons of arrowroot starch. You can also use cornstarch, and then a 1/2 cup of chicken broth, 2 teaspoons of sugar or honey, and then a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And then a classic stir fry ingredient is this Chinese cooking wine. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of this. Now I'm adding 2 teaspoons of toasted sesame seed oil, a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and Chinese 5-spice powder. Mix that all up and then add 3 tablespoons of that sauce to the meat to let it marinate for about 10 minutes while you prep the other ingredients. There's not a lot to do for this. I'm just going to peel this ginger with a spoon and mince that up really finely. Now I'm mincing up 4 cloves of garlic. And I decided to throw in a few mini red peppers, so I'm chopping those thinly. And then I have frozen broccoli in the freezer, which I'm gonna use, and that's gonna help speed up this dinner even more. Ideally, you would have fresh broccoli already cooked, ready to go, or if you would like a quick weeknight meal and less prep, just use frozen broccoli. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of avocado oil to this pan, and I'm gonna put all the meat in there and try to space it out. I did do a double recipe, so there is a lot of meat here, but if you have less meat, you'll be able to space it out more and that meat will get browned nicely. But you don't want these to cook too long. Just leave it undisturbed for a couple of minutes, and then you can stir it up and let it cook a little bit longer until the pink is gone. Now I'm adding in the minced ginger. Give that a minute to cook, and then you can add in the red peppers so that those can soften a bit. One of the reasons why I like stir fries so much is you can use any meat, any veggies, and you can customize it and it comes together so quickly. I also think it's just a great way to just use up veggies. I just added in my minced garlic and giving that just a 30 seconds or so. And then I will add in all the frozen broccoli. I'm gonna use 2 packets of frozen broccoli, which I believe is equal to about 5 or 6 cups of broccoli. It looks like a lot, but I know this is gonna cook down, so I'm adding my sauce over that, and then a cup of chicken broth. I'm just gonna stir this together, mix it up, and then let that broccoli warm up. And so I'm gonna cover it with a lid to help speed up this process. The broccoli is now hot all the way through and the sauce is starting to thicken up, so this is about done. I'm just gonna serve this up and taste it before I serve up the bowls for the rest of my family. But this is a quick and simple and satisfying stir-fry recipe.
All right, let's try this. Perfect. This stir fry is delicious and very easy to throw together in 30 minutes or less. Obviously, it's better if you used fresh broccoli that is cooked. You could just throw it in there and it'll be even faster. But since frozen broccoli is so easy to have on hand, I chose to use that. I added red peppers just for extra nutrition. You could also add carrots. You can kind of make up your own stir fry. This is a perfect weeknight meal. You can also do chicken. You can even do ground beef. So very simple meal idea. I normally use white rice, but we ran out, so I used brown rice today, which is a little bit less fluffy, but very filling. In our house, we call these mini trees, and that's how I get my kids to eat them.
After a salty and savory meal like this, it's nice to finish it off with something fresh and sweet. And I love to make fruit smoothies, and this has been the latest recipe that I have been really enjoying.
I have a new favorite smoothie, so I'm gonna make it for you.
I've done a large frozen banana and about 1.5 cups of frozen mango. I'm adding this pineapple greens powder from Clean Simple Eats. This is gonna add a nice flavor and also a beautiful color. And then also adding this vanilla protein powder. This adds a lot of flavor as well and protein. I add just enough water to get this smoothie to blend together. You're gonna have to use the tool to push the fruit down to help it all get incorporated. So basically I'm looking for a thick and creamy smoothie bowl. So the less water you do, the thicker it will be. This is an amazing dessert, and yet it's super healthy. I love having this after dinner or even for breakfast. Moving into another day, I'm gonna make roasted sweet potatoes topped with buffalo chicken and a creamy sauce. I'm gonna start with a sheet pan lined with foil, and I'm turning on the oven to 450. I love this meal. I love meals like this in general. When you roast a sweet potato and put something on top of it, I think it always turns out amazing, and it just is so easy. So this is definitely one of those easy weeknight meals that I make when I'm in a hurry and I don't feel like doing much in the kitchen. First, you want to pierce the sweet potatoes all over with a fork, and then we'll bake that at 450 for about 45 minutes.
All right, so remember when I made chicken on Sunday? Well, we're gonna use it tonight. I'm gonna make buffalo chicken over sweet potatoes with a creamy sauce to drizzle over top of it. So first I need to make some more homemade mayo.
I always try to have homemade mayo on hand. It serves as a great base for many dressings, especially when you're in a pinch and you need a quick dressing like we do tonight. So I did a whole egg in a glass jar, about 2 teaspoons of Dijon mustard, a tablespoon of white distilled vinegar, a pinch of salt, and then 3/4 cup of avocado oil. I use the markings on the side of the mason jar here to measure so I don't have to get anything dirty. And then with a hand blender, you put it at the bottom of the jar and then slowly bring it up, and it emulsifies super quickly into mayo. You can also get creative with this and put in a clove of garlic or any other flavoring and create a delicious sauce. Look how easy that was. It turned out so thick, and I didn't even wait for the egg to come to room temperature, which is what is recommended. Sometimes I just do it cold and it still works. So for this sauce tonight, I'm doing about a half cup of mayo, and then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of sour cream and 2 tablespoons of milk. Now I'm squeezing in about 2 teaspoons of fresh lemon juice, and then I'm going to sprinkle in some garlic powder, and then I'm going to salt it to taste. I'm just winging all the measurements here. It's not an exact science, just go for it and see how it turns out. I'm adding in a half teaspoon of onion powder, and then I decided to head out to my garden and look for some fresh parsley. I wasn't sure if we had any, but we did, so I chopped some of that up and sprinkled it in as well. I'm sprinkling in some fresh parsley. I don't always have this, and it's fine without it. You can also add in some blue cheese here, because this is going to be sort of a buffalo blue cheese type sauce, except I don't have any blue cheese. Into a skillet, add 1/4 cup of ghee and then your 2 diced carrots. You should also dice up 2 ribs of celery, but I didn't have celery tonight either. Add a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder. Now I'm adding in all of that shredded chicken from a few days ago. I believe this is about 3 chicken breasts that have been cooked and shredded. I'm just going to break that up and mix that all together. I'm adding a 1/4 cup of chicken broth and a 1/4 cup of hot sauce. I usually use Cholula hot sauce that I get from Costco. I really like the flavor of this. And 1/4 cup is actually not that spicy. Once you mix it all together with the ghee and the chicken broth, it's a little spicy, but honestly to me, it just has a lot of flavor. I added a little bit more chicken broth and then about a tablespoon of white distilled vinegar, and then mix this all up until it comes together. This is an extremely flavorful topping for your sweet potatoes. I'm shredding some cheese, and I have some leftover salad from earlier in the week, so everyone will get a little bit of that. And now my sweet potatoes are finished. I like to bake them for a long time until you see syrup dripping out of the skins. You want it to be very soft because the longer it bakes, the sweeter it becomes, and that's how my kids like it. For the kids, I usually just do a little bit of chicken, a lot of cheese, and a lot of the sauce over a sweet potato, and they are happy with that. For the adults, I like to do a lot of chicken, a little bit of cheese, and a little bit of sauce, and that's how I like it. But this is definitely a family favorite. I've made this a bunch of times. This is so easy to throw together. I was missing celery on this night, but you can definitely add that in. It helps to have fresh parsley. But I just like to load up the sweet potatoes, drizzle it with some sauce, maybe add a salad on the side, and you have a beautiful dinner that comes together really quickly, very easily, has high protein, lots of fiber, lots of nutrients. So this is definitely a winner. A couldn't find any of my knives, my butter knives, and so I ended up just using scissors. But I cut off the rugged ends of the sweet potato just in case that bothered some people. And we actually don't end up eating the skin of this. The inside of the sweet potato is so soft that you can basically just scoop it out and eat the inside. Now for the final weeknight meal, I'm making a quick ragu with the rest of that flank steak in the Instant Pot. With the saute function on, I added 2 tablespoons of olive oil and 6 cloves of garlic. And I'm just gonna give that a quick stir. I'm gonna add in some of this leftover tomato paste that I had in my fridge just to use it up. And I'll heat that up as well to develop those flavors a little bit. At this point, I turn the heat off on my Instant Pot because the saute function is so hot, sometimes it burns the food. Now I have the rest of this flank steak that I cut up into some pieces, season it well with salt and pepper on both sides, and then I'm just gonna throw it in there. This is supposed to be the most hands-off recipe. I wasn't sure what to make for dinner, and everyone was hungry. I had been cleaning the house all day, and this idea came to mind because I had some leftover flank steak. So this is truly a very simple weeknight meal. I have a can of whole tomatoes here that I'm just gonna cut up with some scissors so that they're not in whole pieces. Now just throw the meat in there. I love recipes like this where you don't even have to sear the meat. So this is just going to cook for a long time in the Instant Pot until it's tender. I'm adding a teaspoon of dried thyme, 2 bay leaves, a splash of red wine, and then that can of tomatoes, and that's it. We're gonna close that up and cook it for 45 minutes. While that was cooking, I ran upstairs to take a shower because I had been cleaning bathrooms and mopping floors all day, basically, and it felt good to get all that done. So I set a pot of water to boil with some salt, and now I'm cooking my pasta. And then when it's finished, I'm gonna reserve about a cup of the pasta water because sometimes you need that when you're mixing the pasta up at the end so that it doesn't turn out dry. So I'm gonna put that to the side and go ahead and drain this. I'm gonna add the pasta back into this pot, but first I'm melting about 2 tablespoons of butter, and then I'll add the pasta back in there. Do a little bit of pasta water. Some cheese. So we took a simple pasta and made it so delicious by adding the butter, the pecorino romano, cheese, and then the salty pasta water. All right, let's see how this turned out. That flank steak turned out nice and tender. I used a spoon to press it against the sides of the bowl there to get it to break apart. And this makes a super easy, almost hands-off weeknight meal. So glad I threw this together. I wasn't even planning on filming this, but I thought the recipe was gonna turn out good, and it did, and so I am happy to share it with you guys. If you don't have red wine lying around, we usually don't, you can also use balsamic vinegar. So any sort of vinegar to kind of add some sweetness and some tang to this sauce. So thank you so much for joining me for this video. We had 4 simple weeknight dinners and some Sunday meal prep. And I think we got a lot accomplished, and I hope you leave feeling motivated in the kitchen and that you have fresh ideas for feeding your family well. I'll see you next week with lots more meal planning content.